Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Cassie and my channel is all about how I was able to quit my full-time job and am now a full-time seller on Etsy, and I'm looking to help others do the same. In this video, I wanted to go over Etsy taxes because I know when I first started, this was a big mystery to me. This is my first time owning my own business. I'd only ever had normal W-2s before this time. So I thought I'd make a quick video kind of explaining how the taxes work when you own your own business. So if you're already familiar with this, you might not find as much value, but I'll go through kind of my experience and what I know. But I will give the disclaimer that I am not a tax professional. I would go ahead and get a CPA or a tax professional to talk to and file your taxes for at least the first year while you're doing Etsy to make sure that everything is set up correctly. So firstly, in 2021, the rules were that if you sold over $20,000 in US dollars or over 200 orders, that Etsy was required to give you a 1099 form. A 1099 is much like a W-2, but it's for freelancers and for small business owners. That is changing for 2022, and the new update is if you sell over 600 US dollars, then you are required to have a 1099 form, and Etsy will send this to you. So it is important to update your taxpayer information on the Etsy site, or they can shut down your shop for not being compliant. So make sure to give them your social security number and your information so they can file that correctly. Your Etsy 1099 form has your gross revenue for your shop. So this is actually going to include all of your sales, shipping fees, refunds, and card processing fees. So it is something really important to remember at the end of the year that you do include writing off any cancellations that you had out of your total numbers. So if you get your 1099, that might be why you're seeing your gross revenue on your 1099 form is actually more than what it says on Etsy that you sold last year, because your total revenue on your Etsy screen does not include canceled sales. So just remember that for when the time comes. You only pay taxes on the actual profit after all of your expenses. So you do want to make sure that throughout the year you are tracking your expenses so that way you know exactly what your profit was once the time comes to write everything off. So I'm not a tax professional, but here are some of the things that I know you can bring to your tax professional and that they can tell you if you're able to write off and what percentages. So you can write off your total expenses for materials. So if you do any print on demand like I do, you would go into Printify once a month, go to the payments section on the website, and then go to invoices, and you can actually download what the total expenses that you had for each month. Like I said, I do track these monthly myself. That way at the end of the year, it's easier to do your taxes. I use an Excel spreadsheet, but you could use something like QuickBooks where they would actually track this for you. Next, you can track anything that you purchase for your store. So this would be mock-ups for your store, any props that you bought for mock-ups. You could write off any shirts that you bought for mock-ups. You could write off any subscription services. So if you pay for design services like Canva or GoDaddy Studio or Creative Fabrica, if you pay for YouTube Premium to learn about print on demand on YouTube, then you can write that off as well. You get to write off any Etsy fees, and then you also get to write off any advertising that you did for your business on Etsy. My CPA wanted these two things separate, so all depends on what yours want, but I would just bring them separate just in case. And then you get to write off a total percentage of your yearly bills. I don't know exactly how this works, but my CPA took my house's total square footage and then figured out what my office space's square footage is and figured out that it was 5% of my total home. And I got to write off, I believe, 5% of my total bills for the year. So come prepared with what your total rent or mortgage was for the year, as well as your monthly bills. And you can see if that's something that you're able to write off. Could depend on state to state or country to country, but that's how mine worked. You can also write off some things that you purchased for your business, like a new phone, a new laptop, an office chair, a new mouse, etc. So again, just make sure you're tracking these purchases, and keeping the receipts is also important. Lastly, you could write off any mileage. So if you drove to the store to buy props for your mock-up photos, or if you drove to the post office to ship an item, then you could write off any mileage. So it's important to track that if you do have any mileage to write off as well. So when it comes to paying your taxes, if you're going to owe more than $1,000 to the IRS at the end of the year, then you are required to start doing quarterly taxes. Since Etsy doesn't take out any taxes for you and give to the government, you need to actually pay those yourself. So if you're going to owe over $1,000, then you'd need to actually go on the IRS's website quarterly and make a payment to them. If you don't, and you owe over $1,000, then come tax time, when you file your taxes, you may be charged a fee. At least I was here in Michigan in the United States. My fee was about $100, so that could be different for you, but again, talk to a CPA or a tax professional to find out what that would look like for yourself. So for an example, in 2020, I sold $134,000 on Etsy. After all of my expenses, I made about $42,000 in profit, and I owed about $10,000 in taxes. I had to pay that $10,000 in taxes there at tax time, and then I also had to make my first quarterly payment for 2022. So this is another reason why it's important to talk to someone in advance. That way you don't end up having these back-to-back payments like I did. So I would recommend looking into that sooner than later if you're starting to see success on Etsy and you think you'll owe more than that $1,000. So the way they calculated my quarterly taxes and what I owe for 2022 is they took the $10,000 that I owed for 2020 and said that I'll likely owe that same amount in 2021. And so I had to pay 4 payments of $2,500 for taxes. The nice thing about that is if I end up owing more than that $10,000, if I sell more this year than I did in 2020, then there would not be a fee as long as I paid the $10,000 that I had owed in 2020. They're assuming I'm going to owe in 2021. So I would recommend talking to a tax professional about the option of opening up an LLC for your business instead of it all being under your personal name as well. That's a good option to start looking at. So I hope that this video was helpful to you. If you have any questions at all, or there's any other videos that you'd like me to make, feel free to comment them down below, and feel free to like and subscribe if you found value in this video. It really does help out my channel so much, and I look forward to seeing you next time.